Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Reggie Wilson and I were both at Vikings minicamp yesterday. We'll tell you what we saw on today's Minnesota football party.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota football party. It's your guys hanging out talking next-level Vikings football. So join in with Pro Football Network's Arif Hassan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talk's Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota football party. And it starts now.
Welcome in. Happy Wednesday. It's the mailbag edition of the Minnesota football party. I'm Sam Ekstrom, part of the Ron Johnson Show and the Minnesota football party and Minnesota Sports Rankum here on the network. Happy that you joined us today, and I'm happy that Reggie Wilson is here as well. He's the KARE 11 sports director and anchor. He is at Reggie Wilson TV on Twitter, and he was at Vikings mandatory minicamp yesterday. Reggie, it's good to see you, my friend.
Hey, good to see you too. It's always fun when we run into each other out there in Eagan. No shortage of things to talk about today.
Yeah, we were practically elbowing each other trying to get space to get a video of Justin Jefferson yesterday, who showed up for the first time. And it came on an interesting day for Justin in the media because he was also the subject of a Bill Barnwell story where Barnwell wonders if Justin Jefferson could someday become the GOAT wide receiver of all time. Gasp. Jaw on the floor.
Oh my
Could
goodness.
he pass Jerry Rice? We got Vikings OTA takeaways, of course, and we will answer your fan questions, many of them coming in related to yesterday's, and not OTAs, minicamp. Also, it says OTAs on the little new rundown we have on the right side. That's an editorial mistake. It's minicamp. It's mandatory minicamp. It kind of feels the same. Practice doesn't look different, but it's called a different thing. It's all very convoluted. We are brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's the official sportsbook partner of Locked On. Make every moment more at FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Let me start with the question of the day. You can leave your response in the comments section here on YouTube. Could Justin Jefferson be the GOAT someday? Could he be the greatest receiver of all time? The GOAT. He is, through the first 3 years, Reggie, it is undeniable that Justin Jefferson is the best third year, going into his fourth year receiver of all time. Can you deny it, Reggie?
No, I was just telling one of my friends yesterday how blessed we are, how grateful we are to cover someone of Jefferson's talent. He's literally gotten better every year. He's been in the league. Looking at his stats are insane. 88 catches for 1,400 yards as a rookie. That's incredible as a rookie. The next year, you're like, okay, how can he top that? 108 yards, or 108 catches for 1,600 yards and 10 touchdowns. You're like, wow, he can't possibly do better than that. Maybe he can. The next year, he has, this past season, 128 catches for 1,800 yards. Like, the dude is incredible. And he just seems to keep getting better and better each and every year. Like, this might be the best 3-year start to a career for a receiver that we've ever seen.
Okay, so that begs the question, and Bill Barnwell wrote about this at ESPN. I think it's ESPN Plus. You got to pay for it, but it's a good article and a good talker. Could he be the GOAT? And the GOAT, in Bill Barnwell's estimation, is Jerry Rice. I know that local fans want it to be Moss, and I still think that peak Moss is better than peak Rice. But these are the Jerry Rice numbers, Reggie. 22,895 yards. 197 touchdowns. He played until he was 42. He played from 1985 to 2004. That's 20 seasons.
Like, stop it, man.
This is quite a nugget from Bill Barnwell's story. Jerry Rice racked up 9,620 receiving yards after his age 32 campaign. That is a great career for a lot of guys. 9,620 yards. And Rice had that after he was age 32 and played for another decade. That doesn't happen anymore at this position. Now, Justin Jefferson will have, Reggie, the benefit of an extra game per season and maybe 2 extra games per season at some point if the NFL goes that way. So over his career, he might play like kind of a bonus season of games. So there's one element. More of a pass-happy league. Second element, receivers are a little more protected, but trying to reach those statistical benchmarks. So if we say that Rice has 23,000 yards, Jefferson currently has almost 5. So he needs another 18,000 yards. Can we do some quick math on this? So if he averaged 1,500 yards a season, Reggie, that's a healthy total. He would need to play 12 years at that level to match Jerry Rice. That's a pretty big ask.
Jerry Rice is the best receiver to ever play the game. I just contend that. Like Randy Moss was incredible. I got his stats pulled up here. His first year in the league. And I say, Justin Jefferson might have had the best 3 years to start a career by any receiver we've ever seen. Oh, Randy Moss is like 69 catches, 1,300 yards, 80 catches, 1,400 yards, 77 catches, 1,400 yards. First 3 years, he goes 17 touchdowns, which is insane. 11 drop off. Wow. And then 15, like averaging double-digit touchdowns his first 4 years in the league. And then the 6th year, he gets 17 touchdowns again. Like, okay.
I found this on the web.
Okay. Even Siri is talking crazy. Talking crazy to me this morning.
Come on, Siri.
Like, come on. But I just think it's really tough. When you think about Jerry Rice, you think of longevity. But it's not just that he played for a long time. He was great for a long time, which is why he continued to play for a long time. You would like to think that Justin Jefferson would keep these numbers up for the next decade plus, but you just never know in the league. It's a crazy sport. It's a brutal sport. He has had the luxury of staying healthy for the biggest part of his career. I know there was that scary training camp thing where people were like, "Oh no, what just happened?" And he was just like, "No, I'm good. We're good. Let's keep it playing." And he is on a trajectory. One thing I think I would like to see is more gritties. I don't think he scores enough touchdowns.
Yeah.
That is my legitimate gripe. And I don't think it's necessarily his fault, but there should be a little bit more of a concerted effort to get him the ball in the end zone because he is a dynamic player. He does have a nose for the end zone, but he had double-digit touchdowns in 2021. He had 10. But he only had 8 last year. He had all those yards, 1,800 yards last year, but he only had 8 touchdowns. He only had 7 touchdowns his rookie year. Let's get this dude some more touchdowns.
I will say that the Vikings in his 3 years in the league are 8th, 9th, and 6th in red zone touchdown rate. So they'd score when he's on the field. He's often, though, a diversion, right, versus the target. And I think without Thielen, I think that has to change. I think Thielen was kind of the fallback guy because he was so good in the red zone, and I think Jefferson's going to become now the primary target, regardless, diversion or not. He's going to get the ball down there for sure. 25 career touchdowns through the air. Not bad, but not Randy Moss-like by any means. You're right.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp him. How that year that Cooper Kupp was going for the Triple Crown, it was just like, he can't keep doing this. And then every game is like, oh, he scored another touchdown. It's like Justin Jefferson is just as good, if not better, than peak Cooper Kupp.
Oh, yeah.
And so feed him. KOC was the head coach when Cooper Kupp had that crazy season. Like, you saw the blueprint. You got a receiver who is a generational talent. Feed him. Feed him. I would expect Jefferson to get something like 15, 16 touchdowns this year at least.
Yeah, Jefferson last year had 128 receptions, which was league leading. And even with that, Reggie, didn't we still walk away sometimes thinking, yeah, he got shut down. Man, he disappeared for a couple quarters. Why aren't they
Yep.
throwing him the ball? Like, there's
Yep.
still some meat left on the bone. And I know you
Yep.
can't always have your way. Defenses are going to dictate that. But there might still be levels that he can rise to. I think there might be one more ascension before there has to be an eventual plateau.
Well,
There
how
has to
many
be.
times did we see last year, and even in the years under Zimmer as well? Jefferson he'd be on his way to like 200 plus yards in the air. He'd have like 100 plus yards in the first half alone,
Mhm.
and then in the second half, they're like, okay, did they forget that he existed, or and
Right.
then we'd ask after the games, and they're like, well, the double teams, teams switched up their coverages and XYZ happened, and they started playing Justin a little differently, so it kind of took away some of the things we wanted to do. Like, no, that can't be an excuse, not for a guy like that. Get him the ball, watch him work. Like, as you said, left some meat on the bone. Like last year, we thought that he was well on his way to 2K through the air, and he should have had double-digit touchdowns as well. But there was a little part of the season where it was just like, whoa, okay, they need to make a little bit more of a concerted effort to get him the ball.
We've got Justin Jefferson questions as well from the fans, including a new tattoo. We'll get to that after I remind you that we're brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook partner of Locked On. Unfortunately, you can't bet hockey there anymore because the season's over. The Vegas Golden Knights are champions. You can't bet basketball there anymore because the Nuggets are champions. But there are still hundreds of ways to wager because they've got every line from every sport. That includes Major League Baseball. If you're like me, you're a golf nut, the U.S. Open betting is wide open right now. You can get those futures down on the U.S. Open, which starts tomorrow at FanDuel.com/lockedon. They've got great promotions at FanDuel, including the no sweat first bet for new customers. Get up to $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Why not? Give it a shot. The no sweat first bet. There's so much to like about the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It is safe, secure, easy to use, and you get paid instantly when you win. So sprint to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Claim your no sweat first bet if you're a new customer and wager today. It's FanDuel. Make every moment more. Let's dive into the questions, Reggie, and we'll talk about what we saw at OTAs. Dustin Roberts wondering if JJ has a new leg tattoo. I think he does. Someone pointed that out to me. I think that's true. That's all I know. That's all I know about it. I don't know. I have no intel on the tattoo, the origin, what it even is. We did talk to Justin Jefferson yesterday, Reggie. I was not looking at his legs, though. I was just trying to hear him. There were so many people gathered around Justin Jefferson. What was there one kind of takeaway quote that you had from that press conference with JJ?
So what was funny was he look, and I said this on the 10 o'clock news last night. I'm like, look, take from it what you will. I'm just reporting what he told us. But he was just like, yeah, I had a lot going on, with some marketing and endorsement deals. And, I'm really busy. And like, when he was like asked to kind of like pin down what it was, he was just like, "Oh man, it's so many things that I'm involved with. Like you wouldn't believe, so many things." And it was just like, okay, all right,
Yeah.
And it was funny because he had like 3 to 4 minutes of prep with my guy Sam Newton. Just they were talking for a long time. I'm like, all right, Sam, let him go so he can come talk to us now. We're just standing here in the sun, just waiting to talk to Justin Jefferson. Let's speed this up. And so, like, you could tell that, he had his talking points, what he could, what he couldn't say. He didn't want to talk too much about the whole contract situation, but you are probably born yesterday. if you don't think that the contract didn't have at least a little bit to do with him not being. I get it. He's going into his fourth year, his vet years, as he said yesterday. But usually Jefferson is present for everything. Like he's there all the time, whether it's off season, whether it's voluntary, whatever. Justin Jefferson is like the ultimate team player. He's there for everything. He's out in the community. He's not one that spends time away from Minnesota when it's like team time. And so that was a different type of an answer from him to say, hey, I had a lot going on. I don't really feel like I missed out on too much.
Yeah.
That was
an odd quote, I thought.
I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, you didn't feel like you missed out on too much. Okay. All right. Well, fine. It was good to have you back, brother. But it was an interesting I don't know that it was like a tense moment, but there was a little bit of palpable, excitement, if you will, wondering because we were all looking at the door as players were coming out of the building. We're like, okay, Are they coming? Are they coming? And Jefferson just kind of like casually strolled out, like nothing to see here. But then when he got to the practice field, you saw him like kick up his heels, like it's good to be back. And he found Jalen Reagor, and they started dancing a little bit. Like, the excitement was there that he was there. But, yeah, some interesting comments from him in that big old scrum that we were in yesterday.
Yeah, I do appreciate that he showed up and actually participated. I thought that he would show up and maybe just watch. I respect that he had the helmet on. He was in the drills. I think he was lightly used during 11-on-11s, but he was involved. So props to him for that, for not kind of doing the full-on hold, not a holdout, but a hold in, as they say, where you're there but you're not doing anything. I thought the quotes were just a little bit like, yeah, we're not on Mars here, man. Like you can be transparent. We understand. Like, and I was surprised that he went that route and didn't kind of just. You can talk about contracts respectfully and delicately and say, hey, like I'm really happy to be here. I missed my guys. I didn't want to miss this. My representation is handling all the contract stuff, and hopefully we can work something out. But it's not my main focus. I think that he could have gone that route instead of kind of downplaying and saying, I've been so busy with marketing. I've been so busy with all my off-field endeavors. And it was, it is what it is. But I didn't think it was like the world's greatest PR spin of a press conference. Someone asked, and let me make sure I get their name right, Vikings voice, % chance JJ is not extended by training camp. I think we all assume that he will be, but we don't really know how Kwesi operates with these long-term Whopper deals. What do you think, Reg? % chance he's not extended in the next 6 or so weeks?
5%. I just don't see it. I just don't see a world where he's not extended by the time maybe even maybe like the first couple of days of training camp. If it doesn't get done before then, the first couple of days of training camp, we're talking about this deal getting done. It's just a matter of when. And I don't think that it's weird because it's like he has 2 years left on his deal, with this last year of the rookie contract and the option year. And you're like, well, like they don't necessarily have to do anything. But if he's eligible, just don't even get into this whole thing of, don't turn him into like we see what's happening with Stephon Diggs. And we saw how he kind of just tweeted his way out of Minnesota a few years ago. And it worked out so well. Like you might have replaced one Hall of Fame receiver with another, and that next receiver might even be better than the guy who was responsible for the Minneapolis Miracle. And that's saying something. I think Stephon Diggs is an incredible receiver.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't have the type of start to his career like Justin Jefferson has. And you don't want to mess with it. Like, what are the odds that you go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers? what are the odds that you go from Stephon Diggs to Justin Jefferson? And it's like, you don't want to tempt it. Like, don't mess around here. Like, I know you're in this like competitive rebuild and all that stuff, but like, you want to keep this guy happy. He has been, like I said, ultimate team guy, like always gracious with his time, talks to the media, always in the community doing just cool things. Like, I think last month or something like that, he gave away laptops in the community. He was back for that. And you don't want to turn, I mean, it's so easy, and it's such a stereotype too. It's like these diva wide receivers. I don't think that is necessarily in Justin Jefferson's like DNA. I just think he's just a really good guy, and he cares about what he cares about. He cares about being great, but ultimately he's not like a, hey, me, it's all about me, Terrell Owens type of a wide receiver. But then again, you just don't want to poke the bear, So I think it's like 0 to 5% chance that it doesn't get done, because you want to keep that guy happy, and you want to keep that guy here in Minnesota for as long as you can.
Yeah, there's an evolution to these things, right? And Stephon Diggs went through the evolution, comes to Minnesota, very quiet, humble, works his way to a point where he is one of the best receivers in football, works his way to a point where he gets paid. And the cliched mo money, mo problems is a thing. Everybody wants a piece of you, right? You've got all this wealth, you've got all this fame, and things change. Like, we asked Ron Johnson this question. We say, how does Justin Jefferson not like let the money change him? And Ron Johnson was like, no, he's going to change. Like, don't become a jerk. But you are going to change. You're going to have nicer things. You're going to have people that want money from you. You're going to have people that you want to help with that money. And some people you don't want to help with that money, but there are going to be major changes, right? And then you reach a point, I assume, where you probably get a little desensitized to the money. Like, it becomes the new normal. And then all the other stressors, that becomes what matters, right? Like, then it's, okay, I've got my money, I've got this status. Now I just want to win. Now I just want, I want to be in a good situation where I'm respected and I can win. And that's where you've seen historically players get disgruntled, including Stephon Diggs, but not limited to Stephon Diggs. Randy Moss was the same way, right? Like, this has happened many times in history with wide receivers and other positions too. So I think there's going to be a honeymoon period still with Justin Jefferson. I think that this deal gets done. I think, like you, I think it's about 10% that it doesn't get done by training camp. I don't think the Vikings have many areas where they're going to haggle about this contract, because they can't. They have no leg to stand on. What are they going to say? You haven't been productive enough. You haven't done it for long enough. You haven't been healthy enough. You haven't been a good enough citizen. No, they have no grounds to argue against Justin Jefferson. So I think that he's going to get paid a ton of money, and I think the Vikings will give it to him willingly. And I think that does get done by training camp, and I think that everything's going to be nice. I do wonder about whether Justin Jefferson's concerned about the future, because he might be losing this consistent quarterback, Reggie, that's gotten him the ball for 4 straight years now. And he's kind of seeing this kind of rebuild going on around him. Do you think that would weigh on Justin Jefferson at all?
I can think of maybe like 70 to 80 million reasons why he'd be okay. No, honestly, though, that is a good question, though, because look, if Kirk just sets the league on fire this year and he's just otherworldly because he's another year more comfortable in the offense and he's just like spreading it around, 4,500 yards through the air, 40 touchdowns, 8 interceptions or something like that. Like, that's an MVP type season from Kirk Cousins. And I think that kind of forces the Vikings' hand. They're like, oh, shoot, we got to pay this dude. Like, we can't let this dude walk. Dang it, man. But what's interesting about that is if they do decide to move on from Kirk Cousins, like, these quarterbacks these days, they're coming into the league like expected to be the guy already. Like I was watching yesterday, apparently Bryce Young and his connection with Adam Thielen in Carolina is already really good. And Thielen is like, yeah, this dude's the real deal. And so you kind of look at guys who are ready made. Like there's no like, hey, we're drafting a guy to sit, for a season and learn like Patrick Mahomes did, or, some of these other guys have had the luxury of doing. Jordan Love, we'll see what he looks like this year. But these guys are getting drafted to play. Anthony Richardson was thought to be a developmental guy, because he only really had one good year of starting football, but he's taking reps with the ones in Indy right now. They're ready to let him loose. Jalen Hurts had a year to sit behind Wentz, but they let him now these quarterbacks are expected to be ready-made to come into the league and excel. But what we've seen is there's going to be growing pains and all that. And there's going to be times where, there's going to be a concerted effort to get the ball into the playmakers' hands, but their heads are spinning largely out there. And, they'll have their one guy that, they'll try to make. I remember when Cam Newton first came into the league and his rookie year was pretty phenomenal. And he had Steve Smith and their connection was pretty good, but he later became, the type of quarterback that was able to spread things around and really be that all-around quarterback that Carolina needed him to in that MVP season. But that's going to be tough, man. With Kirk, he's been in the league. He knows what to do. He knows how to get the ball into Justin Jefferson's hands. He has done it the last 3 seasons. And there's so many unknowns. They can draft a quarterback who turns out not to be very good. They could take a chance on a quarterback who's younger, who doesn't have the skill set of a Kirk Cousins, or maybe, does Justin Jefferson, can he afford to have an off year because his quarterback is still figuring things out? That's a lot for him to consider. And that's a great question by you, Sam.
Yeah, all I do is ask great questions, Reggie. That's just that's my style. No, we've got some truly great questions coming at us on Twitter about what we saw at mini camp yesterday. I may have said OTAs a couple times on this show, and I'm sorry about that. I can't shake it. Before we get to that, make sure to check us out on Sirius XM, the SXM app, where you can find all the Locked On Sports Minnesota programming, Ron Johnson Show, Minnesota Football Party, Minnesota Sports Rankem as well. You can also hear the hometown broadcasts on the SXM app. That includes the Twins Brewers this afternoon at 12:10, a matinee. Twins trying to sweep the Brew Crew after a drama-filled walk-off last night by Carlos Correa, a bomb in front of 34,000 people to send them into euphoria. That was awesome. Twins try to sweep them today. The SXM app, you can hear Corey Provis on the call for the Twins. All right, question coming in from Nate. If they do deal Danielle Hunter, what has the edge rotation looked like in OTAs so far? It has been DJ Wanham as the replacement for Danielle. It's been Wanham and Davenport. Sometimes, Reggie, they've moved Davenport inside too. They put him on in that 3-man front on the defensive line, put his hand in the ground, and then they bring Patrick Jones out there. So it's the two you'd expect. It's Wanham and it's Jones. The guy that I've seen a little bit of the last couple weeks, though, working in with kind of the second grouping, is Andre Carter, the rookie, undrafted free agent from Army. A lot of people had projected him as a project, someone that they're going to basically redshirt for a year, maybe even be on the practice squad if they can sneak him through. I don't know, Reg. They're using him as if they think he's a piece. So far, it's early. So far, Andre Carter has been on the field with the ones on occasion. So I that's kind of been the one intrigue to me with that defensive end rotation or edge rusher.
Yeah, and I think they're at the point now where it's mini camp, it's early. You're like, what do we have to lose? Let's throw him in there, see what he can do. Especially when Hunter is not there, you're just like, oh, maybe see if we can get some looks and see if maybe we can convince ourselves that we can be okay without Danielle being there. And I am in this camp and I understand what the Vikings salary cap deal is. I understand that. I understand that there's a goal to extend Jefferson and all that. I understand that. But there's part of me, I was reading an article from Florio, and he is kind of a polarizing force here in Minnesota. But he is a Vikings fan. Like he's let that be known. He's a Vikings fan. And so he kind of has a little bit more of a scrutinized eye. But he was just like, a year after running it back, the Vikings are tearing it down. I don't know if you saw that article, Sam.
Did.
But it was interesting in what he had to say, because he's just like, yeah, like they peaked early and it almost kind of ruined the plan to just kind of, he compared it to the 4-year plan that Cleveland had, where they were just accumulating picks. And we saw that they, eventually turned some of those picks into some great players, and also were able to turn some of those picks into getting Deshaun Watson. But the tough part about that is like the Wilfs want to contend, and I don't know that they are just all the way cool with just tanking. And you see, even without Dalvin Cook, this offense is still dynamic. You still have some incredible weapons across the field. You drafted Jordan Addison as well. He hasn't seen much of the field yet, but you expect that he's going to be a difference maker on game days, week in and week out. So you have some building blocks in place, but it just looks really incomplete. And when you talk about the whole competitive rebuild thing, I think this is what it looks like. But I think from a fan perspective and from just a media coverage perspective, it just looks super disjointed. You're like, oh, okay, so you're gonna be cool with going in without having Danielle Hunter just for the sake of getting picks. And I understand, like, if you deal Danielle and maybe you recoup a one from that, maybe you can use that one with your other one and trade up to get in prime position to get a franchise quarterback in the draft next year. I understand that, but it's like you're still sacrificing. Justin Jefferson, in his first 5 words to us yesterday, he's like, yeah, we're trying to win a Super Bowl here this season, and that's what I'm trying to be a part of. It's like you got Super Bowl expectations, but you seem to be tearing the roster down a little bit. Like, I just don't know in what world getting rid of Danielle Hunter, I don't know in what world getting rid of a guy like Dalvin Cook, you necessarily get better. But I mean, I could be surprised. Maybe there's faith in Brian Flores. I think I was talking to my coworker Will yesterday, and I was thinking, like, man, if they do deal Danielle, maybe it's a situation where they aren't necessarily just relying on the pass rushers to get home. Maybe, because Flores has some exotic things that he does on game days. And maybe that's something that he's doing. Like, he's like, okay, maybe I'll rush Byron Murphy. I may throw Asamoah with his speed on the edge one time and rush him. I may put Harry in the box and rush him. Like, he may have some plans like that, as opposed to just relying on the pass rushers to get home all the time. And maybe that can work. Yeah. Maybe they're much smarter guys, football minds, than we are. So I trust that they know what they're doing, but it's hard to look at what they have done this offseason and think, oh, you're not rebuilding, but you still got all these great pieces in place, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where you're like, oh, okay, well, what is this, a 9-win team? Is this an 8-win team? Or do you think you can win 13 again? Like, I think it's a very confusing situation.
Yeah, it is hard to take the Super Bowl proclamations seriously. I don't think it's a teardown, as Florio might have said. I've said that there's a difference between a teardown and kind of a revamp. And this is not a teardown. A teardown is when you are trading every piece for max value, ripping it to the studs. I don't think it's that. I mean, I think there is kind of a pseudo expectation that this offense can carry the team to contention. I think that's totally realistic. You can justify some of these moves based on age, based on, fiscal sense. Patrick Peterson, for instance, aging guy, probably couldn't bring him back. Eric Kendricks and Adam Thielen, very expensive. Dalvin Cook, very expensive for his position. I get all that. It gets murky to me with these pass rushers, with the za'darius decision and now this Daniil trade rumor. That is curious to me, why you would intentionally weaken an already bad defense and put it behind such an 8-ball that it's going to be hard to really manage any kind of traditional pass rush. I will say, Reggie, and you were out there yesterday, it is so much more aesthetically pleasing to watch this defense do its thing, even in a mini camp setting, flooding the line, showing these 8-man fronts and dropping guys in coverage, moving around a third safety in the box, Josh Metellus as a wild card, which leads me to the question from Dustin here. Should we be worried that Lewis Cine isn't taking the most snaps with the first team if he is in fact full go? This has been a weekly concern, Reggie, of folks hearing that Lewis Cine is healthy, but he's not playing with the ones. I don't think that concerns me, though, that he's not with the ones, because I think Cam Bynum was always the guy. I think Bynum was the guy last year. Remember, Cine was healthy and Bynum won the job, right? He beat out Cine fair and square, won that job, and I think that was always going to be the case again this year. I think that Bynum is your incumbent, and it's going to take a little bit to knock him off the perch. If there's a concern, it would be that he can't play the Metellus role, that Metellus has seemingly hopped over him in the pecking order, and that Cine isn't finding a way on the field in a lot of these 3 safety looks. Take it with a grain of salt, though, Reggie, because KOC has said that the competitive part of this roster building process doesn't really start until training camp. So there's plenty of time for that to change. But right now, Cine is clearly, I think, the 4th safety in the rotation.
And it's tough. And especially, I get the question from a fan perspective too, especially when Kwesi before the draft was talking about how much he feels like he has, high expectations for his inaugural draft class. And, he talks about like, hey, we got all these players last year that we believe in, that we think can make a difference in the NFL and for this football team. And you're like, okay, like, fine. And then when you see Cine people were talking about it last year. Like, why is he out there on special teams, on kickoff return when he breaks his leg? And now, he's not running with the ones. But it is early. And he is coming off a very devastating injury as well. So I say maybe watch what happens, second week of training camp as these preseason games go along, how he's utilized before we start making, any judgments. But it is concerning, I guess, from a fan perspective, knowing that he came from this Georgia football team that, he was a starter for that team and looked like a guy that you can just pluck from Georgia and just place right into your starting defensive backfield and let him work. But it was also a thought that maybe he was like the heir apparent to Harry. And if that is the case, then there is a little bit of leeway there for him to kind of, learn the defense, learn how to be a pro. And then maybe, there is a such thing as a late bloomer sometimes. And I know now in the what have you done for me lately and the instant gratification and, Justin Jefferson coming into the league his rookie year, setting the league on fire. And we've seen all these rookies come in and produce right away. I think there is a form of thinking where you're like, well, why isn't he coming in and doing it? Especially if he was thought to be a ready-made player. Sometimes it just takes a bit.
All right, we'll close with this. Reggie, I want you to give the play-by-play of Kirk Cousins' fateful interception yesterday. And after you're done watching this show, you can go watch the Kirk Cousins trailer for the new Netflix documentary. It's called Quarterback, and it premieres July 12th. They follow Mahomes, Cousins, and Mariota. And just as we've been talking, I watched the first few seconds, and it is heavy on Kirk Cousins. So I'm actually very, very excited to watch this show. Reggie, Kirk didn't make a great play yesterday. What happened?
So we're gonna do this.
I mean, if you want, I'm putting it out there that Kirk made a bad play. Do you want to be the one to narrate through it, or am I going to be the one?
He's been getting cooked this offseason, man.
Yeah.
And it didn't help his case. No, you go ahead and walk it through, Sam. Go ahead.
Okay.
We saw it together.
We saw it together. We won't. I mean, no, don't send this to Cam Jordan or Ryan Clark or the Madden people. I don't want them to get any more arsenal to rip our guy Kirk Cousins, our favorite quarterback. But it's a 1 minute drill. Offense has to drive into field goal range to win the game. I think it's like second down, maybe first down. It was early in the series. Kirk Cousins drops back, can't find a man downfield. Just does a safe little dump off, a check down to Alexander Madison. But who was there in his way but Jordan Hicks to pick him and end the game, winning it for the defense. Kirk Cousins, check downs, not good news. And when you throw picks on a check down, I don't know, Reggie. It might be over. I mean, this might be the beginning of the end. How much can we overreact about this play?
I don't know. It's so interesting, especially when you think about the throwing short of the sticks in the Giants playoff game with the game on the line on fourth down. You're like, oh my goodness, here we go. I think it's just innately in him, like Alex Smith. He was always going to check that thing down, and so I think Cousins, like, it's in him, even though Kevin O'Connell's offense emphasizes driving the ball down the field and, all these different things. Like, Kirk is the epitome of, hey, you can't go broke taking a profit, even if it's fourth down and the game is on the line or whatever. Like, if that happens in a game, oh my goodness, people are letting him have it. But he literally threw it right to Jordan Hicks. And it was so inexplicable. And the defense celebrated so hard.
Yeah.
And the Vikings had a nice little barbecue cookout yesterday. Well, Kirk was barbecue chicken. And he had the Allen Iverson, the old school Allen Iverson jersey on. He encouraged the team to have Jersey Day yesterday.
Yeah, Jersey Day.
And so he was the guy who initiated the whole thing. And so they had a Jersey Day. They had a cookout, right outside of TCO Stadium. They had some good food and all that. He had the Allen Iverson jersey on yesterday. But Kirk was not the answer to end.
He was the question.
He was Paul Pierce instead of Allen Iverson. He was not the answer.
Reggie, in closing, give us the pitch. What's on KARE 11 tonight? What's on the news?
Well, we're talking more mandatory minicamp. It was funny yesterday. Kevin O'Connell was like, all right, see you guys at training camp. And we're like, wait, are we not allowed back tomorrow? What's going on? It's like, oh, no. We won't talk to him again until training camp. But we are expected to hear from Kirk Cousins. I dare anyone to ask him about that interception he threw yesterday.
There's a lot of avenues we could go down with him. None of them. I mean, we'll ask him about the Netflix thing. He might be happy to talk about that.
The Madden promo.
Madden
Cam
promo
Jordan.
Getting buried. Cam Jordan.
Yeah.
I don't know if you watched the Ryan Clark comments. Those weren't very nice.
Good Lord, he's just been getting cooked. So look, we'll have whatever Kirk says, the best of what he says on KARE 11. We also have state baseball going on. They crown a champion on Friday, but we got semifinals today. State golf is going on. We got the Twins trying to go for the sweep. So it's a good little sports thing. Oh, we got Aurora in action as well tonight. They're trying to stay undefeated in their second season. So
cherish the sports today, Reggie, because
absolutely.
They're slowly disappearing.
Yeah, it's a little slow burn. It's coming to it, like that barbecue grill where you're trying to get that last little meat on there before that charcoal just
the propane's running out. Yeah, the charcoal. Yep.
Yeah, that's where we are right now. Yeah.
All right. Tomorrow on the Minnesota Football Party should be a Luke Inman production with Luke Braun and Arif Hassan, Ron Johnson, the full crew on tomorrow's party. We'll talk about today's mandatory mini camp. And I'll pose the question, if Kirk Cousins gets hurt, are you willing to let Jaren Hall be your quarterback all year?
Oh, Lord.
We'll talk about that on tomorrow's show. How's that for a tease, Reggie? That's how we do it. He's Reggie Wilson at Reggie Wilson TV. I'm Sam Ekstrom at Sam Ekstrom. Comment below with your thoughts on mandatory minicamp and all the drama going on with Danielle Hunter. Find us free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and tune into the Ron Johnson Show Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday with the Roundtable and the Minnesota Football Party, as well as Minnesota Sports Rankum, all of our shows. Thanks, Reggie. I'm Sam saying so long on today's Minnesota Football Party.
Be blessed. Spread love.